Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, best-selling author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to my channel, we love having you here. Please make sure you check out my channel and hit that subscribe button as well as bell notification icon for more up-to-date weekly videos coming your way. Today's guest is my dear friend and colleague and fellow Long Islander, Cindi Sansone-Braff. Cindi is a wonderful, intuitive medium, but she also has extensive background, in theater and playwriting. So Cindi is really going to give a diverse talk about her multiple roles within the theater of life and the theater itself, and just kind of discuss the crossover and the parallels of a dear passion of mine with mediumship, spirituality, as well as a big fan of theater. So, without further ado, we welcome author, medium, intuitive, and playwright Cindi Sansone-Braff. Cindi Sansone-Braff, thank you for coming on as my honored guest as the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. It's nice to have a fellow Long Island neighbor here and someone that I've developed a professional and personal relationship. But for my audience members, who don't know Cindi Sansone-Braff, tell us a little bit about your current work and some of your background, because to me, I know your personal story and it's inspiring your degree of transformation throughout your life. And you're just a lightning rod of empowerment and insights. I know we're going to get a lot of that throughout the course of our conversation, but tell us a little bit about Cindi. Let's take a closer look.
Well, I'm probably best known for being a psychic medium. I've been doing that a really long time. I think it's going on 30 years now. When I first did it, I was an entertainer at the time, so it was a gig that I sort of got tricked into doing. And I don't fake anything, so I studied really hard for about a year to do this bar mitzvah, to do tarot card readings on it, and I didn't really believe in it at all. It was like, oh, this is another gig. I'll make some money. And when I'm doing the bar mitzvah, all this stuff starts coming through. I studied like 12 books and I was really surprised. So for, maybe 5 or 6 years, I was kind of doing it at parties for entertainment. I got a few private clients. And then over the years, it became, my main gig, my living. I'm also a playwright and I'm an author of 3 books. So I do a little bit of everything. I'm a theater critic as well. And I do write a spiritual column for the Fire Island News. So I'm kind of doing lots of things. I think it's typical of an old soul. We get a little bored to do just one thing. I don't know if it happens to you, but I get a little bored. So I do a little bit of everything. I kind of juggle them. I'm a relationship expert as well and a dating expert. So I'll write articles about that or be interviewed about that. But it all kind of linked together. It's all about the human experience and how I like to express it, whether it needs to be in a nonfiction book or it needs to be disguised a little more in a play. You can say a lot more disguised than a little more comfortable on that, guys. You can tell a lot more truth without people crucifying you. So sometimes the heavy truths I might tell in a fictionalized way. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've had, so far like 15 to 20 guests, and your background, stands out in many ways because it's something that I think is very symmetric, with theater and spirituality, because I think, each lifetime is kind of like a different play that we live. But I'm wondering for you, could you speak a little bit about, because those are 2 big passions of mine, both theater as a Broadway snob and, spirituality. But could you speak a little bit to the crossover? I know you mentioned that there was symmetry there. How does one kind of speak to the other? How does theater, and metaphysical spirituality, what's the crossover between the 2?
I really think the best plays are spiritual and the best dialogue is written from the soul. When you love a play, it's because that dialogue is coming from somewhere else. And as a writer, whether people know it or not, we begin to channel. Like one of my first plays was called Angels, Mice, and Men. And it was about a woman whose husband dies and she's, getting some guidance from the other side. And it's about angels. And I wasn't spiritual at the time when I wrote it. So I really had no idea why I wrote that book. And that play. And I did so much research for it. And when it was finally published and produced 25 years later, everyone thought I just wrote it. And I said, nope, I wrote that a very long time ago. That sort of was what jump started me into spirituality, because all of the research I did for that. So they're very linked. I mean, the only thing I've ever really wanted to be was a playwright. Since I was 15 years old and read The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams, that's what I wanted to be. So all these other things have been crosses and, mixing and going back. But remember, at this stage of my life, I've been around a long time. Women's plays were not being produced when I first wrote them. It's one of the things we as aging women playwrights are bitching about, because you didn't want us when we're young. Now you're aging us out. So when is our time? Do you know what I mean? And literally, I kind of walked away from it for 20 years. Not that I stopped writing, but I just stopped promoting them and stopped doing it because it was just too frustrating at that point. And, the industry's changed a lot. It says there's a lot of short plays that get produced now, which really, I've been writing plays so long, it's more than 50 years. 50 years ago, short plays weren't really what we were taught and what was going to make it. Do you know what I mean? So that changed, and there's a lot more festivals that you can get a shorter play done. I have one going to be done in New York City now in a festival. It's easier, these short plays. But think about theater. It's really a ritual. And it's probably and what is most masses or synagogues, it's ritual. So it's a form of ritual. And I think, putting that spiritual element into playwriting, and probably when you watch a good play, don't you feel like it's touched your soul? Like, if it doesn't touch your soul, you're not happy you went there.
Definitely. I go it for the meaning, not for like the canned laughter that you see at some of these plays, where I'm looking to both sides of me. I'm like, what is so funny? But that's just how theater goes. But yes, it is about the message. It is about the meaning. And I think that's what I think it touches something inside of you that we all share. And I think that's what they tap into, this universal awareness and consciousness. I'm wondering for you, could you maybe think of like one grand scale play that you feel has the most metaphysical symbolism, or movie, if you will, going a little bit off, but I'm just wondering for you who have seen it all, like what do you feel is most congruent with the other side and the larger? What do you think?
Someone else's play other than my own?
You could include yours or someone else's. Yeah.
I find some of, I go more, some of my favorite playwrights are older ones like Arthur Miller or Tennessee Williams. I found they really were able to touch on certain elements because they used a little more poetry in their writing and things like that. I mean, as of late, I find, I see so many plays. I can't even begin to tell you. I see the thing is, I see a lot of musicals, and sometimes they can touch your soul. Sometimes they can't. It really depends on the musical, for sure. You just saw one you told me, really got to you, right? So
well, this has been a big Broadway year for myself. And I think so much of it is, when something's taken from you, you appreciate how much you have it. And certainly Broadway closing down during the heat of the pandemic, you recognized, wow, I'm living in New York and it was taken from me. And now I really need to appreciate what I have, from having the freeze on the shows. But I've seen a couple, from Kimberly Akimbo, which is a show about, someone who has this biological disorder that speeds her aging process. And I don't want to give the synopsis of the show away for my viewers, but man, was that a tearjerker and moving. I enjoyed every moment of it. I thought it was a brilliant show on so many levels. I did see the Phantom of the Opera right before it closed here in New York City, which, again, can't go. That was a very powerful show, but I also thought some of the songs spoke to the continuity of life after death, such as Think of Me, and, how our loved ones on the other side want us to be thought of and mentioned, so that was excellent. But those are some ones that, to me, it has to have substance. It has to have meaning at this point.
Well, one of them that's a little connecting spiritually for me was, I'm writing a play called My Struggle about a 100-year-old Holocaust survivor that goes from 1881 Vienna up through the civil rights movement in this country. So, he gets to meet all these people. It's kind of like Forrest Gump meeting everybody. And one of the people he meets is Martin Luther King. And so I wanted to do a little research about Martin Luther King. So LA Theater Works had an audible called The Mountaintop. And it was a really interesting, play. Kind of it was set the evening, before he dies. And so it's got some spiritual elements. And it kind of really touched me to understand a little bit about Martin Luther King more. And I thought, well, I'll never see this stage, sadly, because it's kind of play, probably won't see it. And 3 weeks later, a theater company, Eastline Theater, asked me to review their play, and it was The Mountaintop. So what would the chance being that I get to see this? And the way they stage it, you feel like you're sitting right in the hotel room with him. Okay.
Wow.
And so then, I thought that was pretty great. And then my play, The Menu, which is about choosing your form of death, take a long drawn out one or a short version based on a dream that I had where one of my friends who had passed, he's in a black suit and he says, "Hi, Cindy," he hands me this menu and it's beautiful. It's got gold lettering, my names. I said, "Oh, how lovely this is." And I open it and it says, "Choose your method of death." And I just closed the menu, said, "Thank you, Michael," gave it back to him, and got up and wrote this particular play. And it's going to be produced now in November.
Wow.
And the person who's directing it her name is C. Kelly Wright. She had a lot to do with the production of The Mountaintop. So what would I had nothing to do with picking this director, nothing at all. So what would the chance of that happening and occurring? So there's all these links and connections. So I think the spiritual world is very in touch. Who knows? Maybe it's Martin Luther King, who I've been channeling on and off for years. So maybe it was him doing it. But the point is, I think theater and spirituality are very, very, very linked. And, just pay attention to your dreams, pay attention to things. But the plays that move me most, and almost, every play I've written, it deals with death at some level. I mean, they do. And, I do some plays about the afterlife and things like that. But anyone who's connected in a spiritual world would probably be very connected to the theater world as well. And I do go for the messages. Sometimes, if they're just to entertain, and there's a place for that too, but I don't need to be entertained. I prefer to be enlightened as well. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I usually leave if it's just pure like bubble gum to like entertain you. I'm kind of disappointed in the experience because I think it should entertain, but also lift you and, walk away with some feeling that something greater has occurred.
I fully agree. And it's interesting that you bring up The Mountaintop because MLK, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, was he a Capricorn? I'm trying to recall, but if he is a Capricorn is all about climbing the mountain. Everyone's kind of doubting you, but you're the one who withstands all the doubts. And certainly his legacy, has withstood time, and people remember him long after his passing. And maybe during his time there was backlash, or people didn't quite understand, didn't have the level of evolution to understand his message. But now certainly, his name is echoed in every spiritual teacher and everyone who wants to tap into what humanity should be about, which is getting beyond the surface, inclusivity, standing up for injustice, all those good things.
And it was, terrifying and horrifying for the man because he lived under death threats every minute. He really lived in that fear. Like, even when he said, "We're not afraid," the man was terrified. Do you know what I mean? So, this is someone who did what he, was destined to do, although it certainly wasn't, an easy thing to be doing at all. And, the courage that he possessed, and even, his "I have a dream" speech. Some of these you have to know were channeled. These things, that speech touches you so deeply, and it's theatrical. And of course, he was a preacher, so it has that element of, giving a sermon. But, when you read that, that came from somewhere above and beyond, so those speeches are great theater as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, it's not just one day that we should commemorate. We should think of his words today. Now more than ever, we do need to hear what those words are about in our world that we're living in. But regarding Cindi, I mean, I'm sitting back and hearing a lot of your background. I'm just wondering for you, I'm hearing, you were a woman breaking into the theater industry. You were someone who, as you said, 30 years ago, when I was just 2 years old, breaking into intuition. Like, how did you get the strength to break all of these grounds and shatter all these ceilings? I mean, where did that come from? Because you are
But
doing
it
it now
seems like
before.
I've never done anything like a traditional career as other people. I mean, yes, I taught some creative writing, and I taught aerobics, but I was also a professional belly dancer for 25 years, and that's a very spiritual, it's an ancient and enduring art.
Hmm.
And I was a Hawaiian dancer and Tahitian dancer. When I did these, I didn't understand the goddess energy, the spirituality of that. This you can't, spend all these years listening to that music, doing these dances, and not become spiritual. It was all kind of linked. But very few people knew very much about belly dancing. They tend to, think I was a stripper, which I'm like, yeah, yeah, I got to dance at Lincoln Center being a stripper. Okay, whatever. Like trying to educate people about what these things were. And they're also very linked in many ways, but it kind of was always doing things that weren't typically what people did, and I was a children's entertainer long before anyone did it. Like no one knew, what do you mean you're a children's entertainer doing birthday parties? How can you make any money at that? And, it became a huge industry, but it's, breaking into different worlds. But when you're a creative person, it's hard to sit in an office. It's hard to
Hmm.
sit still.
Do
Do you
the
know what I mean?
nine to five. Yeah.
And even then, it was a much harder career going from Manhattan to Montauk, doing 8 shows in a day before GPS. My Friday afternoon, 5 hours, was mapping the weekend, looking at maps, so finding the routes, knowing how to get there, having it in
Wow.
my head so I'm get there
All
on time.
before Waze and
All
GPS and Google Maps.
so I think that, a funny thing about now, we could write a funny movie how the GPS system goes down. People, the Generation X, they can't even find their way home 3 blocks away. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
no question. Yeah, I've noticed for myself, like I'm just driving around my own town and I'm like, I can't move an inch like without it. And it's just, yeah, crazy how we
right.
don't
And
use
so
those. What else is it
these
true?
were things that you might think were, and remember, there was an internet then. We couldn't just buy costumes. We had to make them and somehow find someone to do things. Music wasn't like you could just download it. Everything was so much more difficult, in order to do it. But I really believe being a children's entertainer, going to thousands and thousands of homes, from people who are very rich to some of the worst neighborhoods in East New York, um, seeing all kinds of people from the very wealthy to poor to middle class, every ethnic group, that I would have never been privy to their rituals. Their rituals, our birthday party is a gathering of family. So I think I learned a lot about the demographics on Long Island. I could tell you who lives where in what town. Do you know what I mean? And I think that all helped me be a better writer and a better playwright, because I really understood all kinds of people that I would never have had an inside, inside into their lives. So I think it was all preparing me for everything that I do. So it's all kind of linked. And, I think it's fascinating how, a creative mind works.
Mhm.
But really, all that I've done is create jobs out of the air. So I tell people, you reinvent yourself, create a job, see a need, start it. There were very few children's entertainers. What made me do it was my daughter was 3. I saw the worst clown, and the person charged a fortune. I said, oh my God, I was a theater major. I could create better children's entertainment than that. And so on the seat of my pants, I just created one show after another, because I saw a need. So if you don't want to work for someone, figure out what needs doing and do it and create it.
And that's what I love about you is there's like direct spiritual teachers. They'll get up on a podium and they'll talk, but then there's indirect spiritual influencers and teachers where they will have like you said, like a clown show, or they will do theater. And I think it's a great way to reach a lot more people because not everyone can have access or wants to be preached at or lectured or is open to that. But if you could just tap into it, maybe in a direct or indirect way, you're really hitting on a lot of levels and reaching a lot of people in different ways. I think that's a brilliant concept, that because there's this kind of box of what people will define as a spiritual seeker and teacher and just doing a certain thing. But for you, it's a lot more broad and colorful, and you're able to really, reach a lot more different folks that way.
And remember, they're archetypes. The clown is an archetype. When
Mm,
I portrayed the princess characters, these are archetypes. I did witches, archetypes, all these characters that really were preparing me for what life is, understanding Carl Jung and his archetypes and
mm,
what they were about. And I remember, you and I had something in common. We both had a little direct channeling or connection with Jesus at some point in our life. And, when I began to channel him, and I'm 42, and I'm thinking, and I said to Jesus, I fell so short of my calling, didn't I? Being a children's entertainer. And Jesus just laughed. He said, where was he the most in the New Testament? At parties. He loved to be at parties where people were celebrating and happy. And they began to show me glimpses of how much I've helped children. And then the next day I ran into someone in the supermarket who recognized me. She said, "Oh, hello, hello, hello. You were my Cinderella. Do you remember me? 15 years ago you did my party." And I said, "Oh, yeah, hi." And she said, every time when I'm sad, I look at my 3-year-old's birthday party when Cinderella came.
mm,
So here we are thinking we're not really touching people's lives, and we really are. And being the fact that I could entertain 1, 2s, and 3-year-olds, very few people could entertain a 1-year-old. Okay. And I used to do a little puppet show for them. And at the end of it I would play certain songs, What a Wonderful Life by Louis Armstrong.
mm,
And
mm,
the 1-year-olds would lie on the floor during that number, just lie on the floor and chill out for the whole song, and then get up. So I was wondering, was that a past life? Did they hear it before? Why did they love that song so much? But it's what made me believe in reincarnation, because observing such young children at 2, you can't learn that much manipulation in 2 years on the planet. You had to come from somewhere else. How does one child is so good, one is so bad? One knows how to be sweet at one moment, have a temper tantrum the next, and get their way. So it
mm,
made me really believe in reincarnation, and seeing some really good parents with some really bad kids and some really bad parents with really good kids. People come the way they come. So
mm,
I think it really taught me a very good foundation for what I would later on do in
right.
life. So I think they prepared me, spirit prepared me from the ground up for this. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's just when you are observing this and seeing it from a different angle, it's evident that that child is not a blank canvas, and just
oh no.
the congruency or lack thereof with the body and the soul is so vastly different. And, we live in a very glib surface society that will just see the body and associate you with the age, the body, your name, and all these kind of constructs of your experience, but not the full totality of the story of your soul. And being intuitive, it seems like you're able to look past the surface and see. Could you speak a little bit more about soul age, chronological age, and how,
Oh,
because it's
yeah, you
something
could
that,
see some children were very, very old souls. I mean, they would be the ones that someone's grabbing one of their, I would hand out instruments, their tambourine from them, and they just hand it over here, have it. Some kids, they were so kind. Also, they wear their souls on their sleeves.
their souls,
And
I love
I
that.
would be able to put toward the end of my long career, 25 years, I knew some of the parents a very long time, 15 years more, and they would maybe have a little child, a second or third child, and I would tell them, boy, this child, I'll tell you their karmic lessons they need to learn. This one needs to learn to be less greedy, maybe a little kinder, needs to know the world doesn't revolve around them, a little give and take here. And I would give the parents like what the child needed to learn. And years later, they would call and say, boy, we should have listened to you back then. And, I remember one child was so bad and the parents were so good. I'd be like, man, this child's like a reincarnated Nazi.
Wow.
Should just bypass grade school, go right to prison. And the child ended up in prison, by the way. But the
Wow.
point
Wow.
was, I saw it clearly. He's 2 years old stepping on babies.
Mm,
Like this is not normal.
right.
Normally children, you could see their kindness, how gentle they are with a baby. You would see it. So it's really soul age isn't, some people are 95, young souls, they've learned nothing, not in this lifetime, probably not in the other lifetimes they had. So old souls are people that know right from wrong. They know
Mm,
it from the moment they're born. They're hardworking and they're people of their word. You can see it in them. All of us see a little child and we wonder, that child's a really old soul. And, oftentimes when I did the 1-year-old birthday parties, the old soul, babies with newer soul parents would
mm.
not want to leave
It's
me.
interesting.
Like they'd be clinging to me and crying and not wanting to go back to their mom. And I would just look at them and say, don't worry, mom and dad will learn. You're going to have to teach them. And one very old soul, 3-year-old, I was painting her face. I'm a clown. And she's having this really serious talk with me. Now, the audience, the parents at this party were all doctors,
Mm,
surgeons, brilliant people,
mm.
everyone at the party. And this
Type
3-year-old,
A
obviously
personality.
genetically brilliant.
Yeah.
And I'm painting her face, and she said, Clown, I'm going to talk to you about something very serious. And all of a sudden, everyone's listening to this 3-year-old. And she said, I don't know, mommy and daddy don't get it. You get it.
Wow.
They don't talk about God. I talk about God, but they don't talk about God.
Mm,
You want to talk about God? I said, sure, you can talk about God with me. And she has this philosophical discussion with me. And, I'm telling her, well, maybe your job is to teach everybody about these things. Maybe they don't know. And when I go to leave, she screams, I do believe clowns are the smartest people in the world. And her father comes over to me and says, I'm a surgeon. My child's never told me I'm smart. I said, well, maybe you need to talk to her about the things she needs to talk about. So there was a little soul, just wondering how am I born into this family? It doesn't resonate with me, which is the hero's journey. It's
mm.
always the hero's journey to be born into a family that doesn't resonate with us.
Doesn't get you.
So,
Yeah.
you've had it, I've had it, the experience of how did I land here and how am I here? And so, from out of the mouth of babes, from children, we could learn a lot. And another child, I'm Cinderella painting her face, and there's 35 children. And I had, told the parents, look, you really can't paint. I'm a really fast face painter. I could do 35 children in 15, 20 minutes. I'm fast. But I said, really, we should just do a regular show without. No, I want face painting. So, I tried to keep the kids entertained for 45 minutes. Really, I should have cut it at half an hour to do the face painting. But then I'm overtime. No one's paying me anymore. I'm 30 minutes into painting the faces, past when I'm being paid. And the parents are yelling at me. Their kids are waiting online and they need to be painted. And I'm shaking at this point. And the 3-year-old whose birthday party said, stop yelling at Cinderella. You're making her shake and she's going to cry and she's going to leave my party.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. And then all the parents shut up. Okay. Like, how did the 3-year-old see that I'm shaking and I'm going to cry? And the grown-ups have no concept of what's going on. Do you know what I mean? So that has to be an old soul because old souls are empathetic. They're
Pathetic,
compassionate.
intuitive.
They're
Yeah.
intuitive. They also sense when someone's doing something wrong.
Mm,
So they were the most comforting through my journey, my midlife crisis,
mm.
when I wouldn't even want to go to work some days, but the show must go on. Doing those parties, those kids would hug me and tell me they love me. You know, 15 minutes, they're telling you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Children know how to love.
Mm.
They forget how to love later on. So hanging around with children sometimes can reinforce your belief in reincarnation. So, I think they taught me the most of anything.
Sure. What advice would you give to a parent who may, have a gifted child or a child who's maybe more evolved as a soul?
In what would you say to that parent to just allow that child to unfold? What words of wisdom from your experience would you have to say?
You have to listen to them and what they're saying, okay? And listen with your heart and your soul. It's very difficult to be a psychic child. I don't think I was particularly psychic as a child. I remember having some connection with the other side. I'm grateful that it happened when I was older because I was very, very grounded to the earth plane.
Mm.
You also have to teach a child that's very spiritual to be grounded. We're here on earth. There's a fine line between psychic and psychotic, by the way, very fine line. So my clients that are young and very psychic, I have to ground them. When they start talking woo-woo out there, I'm always grounding them first. Let's be grounded here, because not every number is a sign. And if you're going to be an accountant, you think every number is a sign, you're going to land in a mental hospital, because it's just not true. So
having a balance is key.
A balance between we have to take care of our bodies. I don't care how enlightened I am. Without food, without money, without shelter, I'm going to freeze and starve. Okay.
Exercise too.
Right. Right. So we have to be grounded. We have to honor this body. We have to treat it like a holy temple. We can't, ignore it and negate it. So teaching a child to honor their body, but also if you have a child who's spiritual, you better start getting spiritual, because they're going to need that, or they're going to end up maybe turning to drugs or alcohol or something because it hasn't been fostered. It hasn't been nurtured.
Mm.
I remember when my daughter was going through her teen angst and I'm going through my midlife crisis at the same moment. They parallel each other. I began to read spiritual books, and I had a ton of them on my bookshelves, and my 15-year-old daughter began to steal them and read them.
Wow.
And so it was very helpful to her. So maybe if your child, you don't understand them, then read, seek. Do you know what I mean? See what they're asking you.
Yeah. Because it's interesting. I find a lot of parents want to self-replication of themselves.
Oh, sure.
Versus the acceptance that the child that you are bringing to this world does not come from you, it comes through you. And I think leaving the ego out the door and just accepting that this kid could be totally different than what you're about, and having the environment to allow that kid to unfold versus just kind of fitting the mold of yourself is important, because there's a lot of narcissistic parents who just want themselves and they can't accept a kid anything different than their worldviews.
Which is sad. And also, remember with children, it's also teaching them the world doesn't revolve around them. I think my generation made a mistake in really being Santa Claus parents. Too much giving our children everything. We didn't want to be raised by the shell shock World War II fathers that beat the hell out of us if we had a different opinion. So we wanted them to be totally free, undisciplined, blah, blah, blah. And the world revolved around them. There's extremes here. Sometimes children have to learn. You have to wait. It's not all about you. Even when I was a children's entertainer, the children had to wait online. The parents were screaming, "Put my child first, go first. There's 35 kids here. I'm one person. What do you want from me?" Don't push your kid first. They have to learn to wait. And they're not going to die waiting, okay? They're going to drop dead. Patience is an attribute. Learning patience, it's not me, I. So I think what we're not teaching in America, that it's about a group. Even when people got really upset about children wearing masks, I don't think it was such a bad thing. They learned, I'm wearing a mask for you, you're wearing one for me. And sometimes we have to do something for the group. It's not about me. I don't think that was such a terrible thing. I think the rest of their life, they're going to learn sometimes we do something for a group of people, that even if we don't want to do it, it's for the greater good, or what's perceived to be the greater good, regardless of whether it was or not. So children are narcissistic. They come that way. Okay. They're born that way at first. And we have to teach them patience, fortitude, endurance, that it's not always about you. Families are smaller, the less kids. I think growing up in bigger families, we knew that. If you're the fourth child or the 15th kid, you waited. No, my mother had 4 in a row. I'm sure I sat in a dirty diaper a long time, and I'm sure it was okay because she was doing the best she could with 4 children, under the age of 5. It was difficult. So I think having one or two children, maybe we give too much. We indulge them too much. We're always there for them. We don't want them to cry. We don't want them, sometimes you have to cry. Sometimes you have to get a little tougher edge. So I think it's gone the other extreme from never listening to what children say to almost worshiping at their tabernacle. There's between the two, there's a balance. Something humans have a hard time learning balance. It's like
Very
one
extreme.
extreme or the other.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you think it's bad now. I mean, I'm certainly in the field and it's gotten 10 times worse. But I think you make a point that's shifting from this me consciousness to this we consciousness, and having people get out of their own way and see that there's a whole world outside of you and it's not your world and we're just in it. We're all a part of this and everyone's very egocentric, it seems. And making that
And
shift.
instant gratification every second, every minute. And life calls for endurance, perseverance,
It's a
patience. Those
false
are things
sense
we
of,
hate to hear. We hate to hear it. Sometimes a hard situation you're going through, the lesson may just be fortitude, perseverance. You can get through this. I mean,
yeah.
no one wants to learn. Old souls are not patient people. We are like the least was so impatient as a child. My father's supposed to teach me how to ride my two-wheeler. He takes the little, the little training wheels off the back, and I'm waiting for him for like 10 minutes. Where are you, Dad? I just went on that bike, and by the time he came out, I'd already learned. And he was like kind of furious at me that I did it without him. I'm like, well, I was going to wait forever. Do you know what I mean? Like, I had no patience as a child. Learning patience has been a karmic lesson. My clients hate when I tell them that's your lesson, patience. They can't stand it. They want me to give them an instant solution to this right now, solve it. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. And I can't even give you the answer. I can't even tell you what the outcome is because spirit will not let me. You have to go through the steps through this. So, it's really a hard lesson for all of us, patience. And I don't think in America, nobody has any patience. You ever see them in a store and they're just yelling at everybody and barking and they say, by the way, the biggest bullies are women 65 and over. They bully everybody. They want everything, demand everything. That's terrible. Do you know what I mean? Like, be patient.
Do you feel that's why a lot of us, incarnate into different parts of the world where our greatest gift comes from our greatest challenge in a way?
Absolutely.
Where, I mean, certainly we're in New York and for us, it's like quick, 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 but it doesn't seem like so many people are evolving past the New York way and they just want it right here, right now, move other people out of the way to get ahead, just bump other people. It's like kind of like Aries ruled New York, if you will. But it seems like a lot of demographics have a similar theme of lessons for the soul. And to be different than your environment, to not be a leaf in water, but to generate your own current and to really maybe be an example for others from your ways.
Right. And again, remember, our children are our greatest teachers. If they're pushing your crazy buttons, well, there's something you're not healed about. Maybe there's some lessons you need to learn. Sometimes a difficult child teaches us we can't fix people. Teaches us that we're not totally responsible how this child turns out. They came the way they came. Do you know what I mean? We have to sometimes leave people where they fall. We have to let people learn the hard way. We can't enable so much. Old souls are enablers. We tend to enable everybody. We do it because we see a train wreck before it happens. And we're trying to prevent the train wreck because then we're going to have to clean up the train wreck, which is probably going to be harder than trying to stop it. But there's times when I hear spirit tell me, back off, just back off. This is not your cross to carry. It's not your mess to clean. Stop. You're ka-chinging up negative karma. Get out of our way, please. Get the hell out. Don't let us make you sick, Cindy. Now you're too sick to help that person. Get the hell out of our way. So enabling is something old souls do. We really are enablers. It's
you would know this better than anyone. Not my circus, not my scene. From your, you live that, yeah. But yeah, it's a concept called non-interference, where sometimes we have to remember that people are there to learn lessons, and if we're picking up after everyone's mess, much like an alcoholic, they're not going to pivot, have the potential to pivot and change if we're constantly cleaning up. And right now we avoid pain, we avoid suffering at all costs, but sometimes it's what people need to move the needle in their lives and to progress and evolve.
And to be accountable. Have to be. There's very little accountability in this culture. It's bad. It's bad. People don't get the consequences of their actions, or someone cleans it up all the time. It's bailed out. It's really hard to be accountable. And I think that's big karmic lessons for everyone. Be accountable for your actions. Pretty much take what you want, but pay for it. That's the laws of karma. Action, reaction. I remember my daughter, when she was a teenager, I used to give her a little advice every morning. Don't smoke cigarettes and live to tell. If it's not criminal or unkind, I will tolerate it and take what you want, but pay for it. Okay. Because that's life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're not willing to pay the piper, don't take it.
Yeah. My last topic or question, I know, is an area that's very close to your heart and the work that you do. Certainly we could have an entire series on this one topic, because I know, you have so much to say on it, but I want maybe just, if you have anything regarding relationships to kind of shed, some insight on what you've seen throughout the years and how people could really pivot from what we call cellmates to soulmates. I know you have a lot of these isms and sayings, but anything that you could really speak on regarding proper lasting relationship versus avoiding some of the potential pitfalls that people may face within romantic relationships, interpersonal relationships, because I know that's a big area of your focus.
Well, remember, what we should have been taught as children is that not all love is created equal. If we had learned that as children, it might have saved us a lot of problems. The easiest way to describe it, what was channeled to me, was called the ladder of love. It's a brilliant concept. It's easy to
Perfect
understand.
for my channel. Yeah.
Right. It's brilliant and easy. Top of the ladder of love is soulmate. When you meet this person, you're going to have a recognition factor. It's not a choice. You're going to love them almost instantaneously with your heart, soul, mind, and body. Okay. It has to maintain it. You have to be two equals. That's the problem. You can't be mommy to a boy. They can't be your boss. Then we can have addictions. You're not fixing anybody. Two equals. You have to say what you mean what you say without being mean about it. Otherwise, it drags down the ladder of love. Okay. It could go all the way down to cellmate, the term that you use. That's toxic love, which brings out the worst in us. Okay. Can have a very karmic connection. You could feel like you've always known them. You could feel a recognition factor as well, because karma's here. We've got something to rectify, change. And I don't knock cellmate love. It serves a very important purpose in a world with unhealed people. If you have a lot of childhood rage, you're going to need to express that somewhere. And it's probably safer to rage behind closed doors with one person than to become a suicide bomber, because the suicide bombers are always loners, or to be one of those people that gun 20 people off a building. They're loners. They have nobody to rage with behind closed doors. So it serves a purpose. After a while, we're going to not like the person that we are in that, and we're going to move past the anger, hopefully, and it's no longer serving its purpose. But love can also have just the mediocre version of love. When we're young, if we've never had a soulmate, maybe we marry the wrong person. They seem like, they're right size, shape, color person. It's like the old arranged marriages, and we marry this mediocre version of love. And after a while, maybe we're brought a soulmate, or someone cheats because it's not meant to last forever at all. And then there's the narcissistic rung, which I think the younger generations play on quite a lot. I call it the Tinderella. Get one, throw it away. Every 3 months, I got a new one. Mediocre love can't become soulmate. Love can't go up the ladder. If it started out as cellmate, it can't go up. If it's a narcissistic rung, it can't go up. But the sad part is soulmate can go all the way down to toxic, which it often does. Mainly it goes to mediocre. We could have a reality show. 10 years into a marriage, who were a man and woman to fit a plan, or two people to fit a plan, mediocre love, and who were soulmates. You couldn't even tell after 10 years. It gets watered down. Maintaining soulmate love is the only hope for humanity. My true mission is world peace, one soulmate couple at a time. They teach peace, love, and joy. Mediocre love teaches Cold War.
What are
Toxic love
some of
teaches
the
outright war. So if you're raging behind closed doors, what you're teaching your children is war. If you're shutting the hell up, you're teaching them Cold War. So maintaining soulmate love is really difficult. Only 1% of people do it. It's sad. It's frightening. I'm hoping by the time I die, I push the numbers up maybe 1.25%, trying to change this little bit of aspect of love. Honor your soulmate love. Soulmates come above everyone. They come above your children. I know that's un-American. Okay. But putting children first has been a very failed experiment. It's what my generation did. It's a failed experiment. I make most of my money on parents 60, 70, 80, 90 with 4 kids, 2 that don't talk to them and their hearts are broken. So that's what they got for putting their kids first. Your soulmate comes first once your child is old enough to say the word no. They say no at 6 months, they're not coming first anymore. They have their own will. Before they can talk and they don't have their own will, maybe they can come first. But after that, soulmates come first. Honoring, so your children will go out and find their own soulmates. You want to teach your children soulmate love is a pajama party with your best friend. It doesn't get old. It doesn't get boring. The sexual chemistry never dies. They have extreme sexual chemistry, soulmates. But maintaining soulmate love is crucially important. It's part of what COVID locked people in a foxhole for 2.5 years. Blew up a lot of relationships. It blew up them really fast. God does not want toxic love. It is not good at all. So if we can't maintain peace in our own house, in our own home, how's there going to be peace in the world? People with 3 bathrooms and 4 people can't have peace in their house. It's an astronomical problem, isn't it? So, it starts in your home and, it starts in our own heart. And it's not easy. It's not easy. People push our crazy buttons all day long. People want to make you nuts. They work at it. They work at pushing your crazy buttons. All we can do is not take it so personally. Righteous anger, just the facts, address the facts, and don't take it all so personally. It helps.
Cindi Sansone-Braff, thank you for, really speaking on a lot of key areas. I know we delved into your theater background, the crossover and symmetry of spirituality and theater, a lot on relationships, past lives, consciousness of children, spiritual parenting. Is there any messages that you may have that we didn't get into? And also, I know you mentioned that you're an author. You have a lot of wonderful books. Grant Me a Higher Love is a real favorite, among many. But where could people find you if they're interested for a reading, as well as speak on maybe a couple of your books that, I know there's so many of them, but maybe a couple on them and where people could find those as well.
Okay, you can go to my website, which is grantmeahigherlove.com. Has the books on the homepage. You'll click over to Amazon. Why Good People Can't Leave Bad Relationships is a big seller around the world. That seems to resonate with people. I think the title itself gets people looking into the book. That probably should have come first, that book, because some people have to leave a bad relationship before they can get a good one. But no, Grant Me a Higher Love came first. Then Why Good People Can't Leave Bad Relationships came. And my third book is Confessions of a Reluctant Long Island Psychic, which talks about my journey to becoming a psychic, some of the things we talked about here today. And then it's a psychic seminar as well. It's a memoir and a psychic seminar. So, it teaches things, how to hone your telepathy and things about the Akashic records. And what people tell me as they're reading that book, all of a sudden they'll be read about getting signs from the other side and, about a butterfly, and they'll be sitting outside reading it and a butterfly goes by them. There's a lot of synchronicities that happen when you're reading that book. And one of my clients just showed me her little 2-year-old grandchild's obsessed with the book. Wow. She just can't read, but she walks around with it all day long and it looks like she's reading it. And I'm like, well, she just fell from heaven. She knows what's in that, is truth for her, but it's a very cute little picture. But those are my nonfiction books. I really prefer being a playwright. When I have to write those books, you have to nail my feet to the floor. They're not my preferred method of writing. I could sit forever and write a play. It doesn't bother me. Those kind of, 2-3 hours, I got to get off the seat. I had enough. Do you know what I mean? But there's an expression in Judaism: to live a complete life, you need to plant a tree, make a child, and write a book. Okay.
Mm.
And I think the wisdom of writing a book is those books are the knowledge that's been channeled to me from the universe. And if I didn't write those down, they kept begging me, write these down, it's going to be lost. Okay.
Mm.
So writing those down was more so that the word can be out long after I've left the universe. Okay. And funny enough, Amazon is brilliant. They're the main publisher of a lot of books. And after a while, after I die, and maybe after my daughter passes, these things are going to fall into the public domain, and Amazon's going to own them. And Amazon's going to have a field trip with these books. All of a sudden they have all the access to do whatever they want with them, which is fine with me because I just want the legacy to go on, the learning to go on. But writing a book makes you codify, or writing anything makes you codify things, clarify, makes you, and I'm an avid researcher. So, and when I write historical things like my Beethoven play, I don't ever tamper with a fact. Now, trying to find a fact is reading 20 books, is 20 different versions of the same fact. So go figure. I have to then figure out from 20 different versions what was probably the closest to the truth it could be. But doing all that research leads you to another thought and another this and another that. So when you write a book, it involves research. And in the research, you're probably going to learn a lot more than you knew before you started writing that book. So, I advise everyone, write your memoir, write a book, even if it's just for your grandchildren, just for your future generations who might want to know that you struggled with something. Maybe you struggle with a mental illness and your great grandchild has that same mental illness, and go, wow, there's a genetic component here. Writing things down, codifying it is important. And, it's one of those things, I've always wanted to be a writer. In kindergarten, they asked me what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an actress, a dancer. In first grade, when I could write, I wanted to be a writer and an actress and a singer and, a dancer. So I think I've kind of been all the things I said I was going to be in kindergarten. And I'll tell you a funny story. In first grade, we had to write a story. And as a writer, this, I can't, every time I read it, I edit. Okay. So the teacher would hand it back and you're supposed to just copy it exactly as it was with the corrections. But no, then I saw a different thing and I had to rewrite it. So I went through this 5 times and my teacher got so mad at me and said, now you can't hang yours on because it's not perfect. She had no idea that a writer rewrites and rewrites and edits and edits and edits until they find it perfect. And then I was so upset by that experience. Do you know what I mean? And instead of recognizing a writer's mind, the teacher should have said, well, then we're going to put it where you will cross outs because you keep editing and that's fine because you're a writer.
Yeah.
But
It shows you how shows the disempowerment of the education system.
And how it made it feel like
the teacher wants to teach and not about what the student has and possesses within.
Right. And it's funny because then when my daughter, she ended up getting the creative writing award in high school and she wrote a thing. And then I said, well, I'm going to edit for you. It has a lot of grammatical mistakes in it. And I edited for her. And when you got it back, the teacher said, this was just way too edited. I liked it better before. Now, here I did to her what I was sort of taught, edit to edit the life out of it at some moment, so there's a fine line between editing and letting it go. And I think you and I've had to learn that, right? When has it been edited enough? And when is it okay to be spontaneous and maybe not so grammatically correct because it's more soulful and heartfelt? But an education system, by time we get through it, we don't know what's the right way to write.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's about letting it rip at first. You could always, if you have less, you can't do more with it. But if you have more, you could always refine it. And then afterwards, it's like a right brain, left brain thing. You get it out, the creative, juices out, and then, eventually you come back to it, get it, chopped down. But also many heads are better than one head. And so that's why I use, team of editors within my work, because I could be my biggest critic, but my editors will rip me a new one times 10 with my stuff. So it's important to have that objective eyes on your work as well. But I agree, I think there's a beautiful saying that everyone has a story in you. You just don't want to die with the story or the music still in you. And you're someone who lives that to the fullest, where you have something in you, you listen to it, you put it out there, you don't care about what people think is automatic, ultimately what's left is the ripple effect, as you alluded to, not the naysayers, the doubters. And as they say, if they're not hating, you're not popping. So consider that a reflection that you're making an impact if you're having, the haters come your way.
Right, and also remember, most people don't read. Very few people read. So,
Right.
you
Right.
know, people are so worried. What are people going to say? I said they're probably not even going to read it anyway. So you write it to
Right.
me.
Right.
They're
Just get it
probably
out
not
there.
even going to know what you wrote. And of course, as an author, it's very hard because you're out there in the public and people have a lot of opinions and they're not kind when they
Yeah.
voice them. Do you know what I mean? And they haven't walked through our shoes or whatever. So you have to get a little tougher exterior too, not to take all the criticism personally, because it could ruin your day if you let it. Like,
Yeah.
and
Well,
as a playwright, I'll send out a play. Some some person will say, "Oh, this isn't ready for a reading." Another person will produce it. So like you get a million opinions here.
right.
So everybody has an opinion. So ultimately, if you're happy with what you did, then that's what matters.
No, and follow it. You got to believe in it. You can't believe you can't achieve. I mean, you look at Sylvester Stallone with Rocky. No one believed in him, and he slept outside the producers, offices. But he's like, screw it, I'll do it on my own. And he acted and produced, I guess, at least the first Rocky. So, it's like you just have to ask the universe, what do you want me to do for you? It's not going to fit every mold, but eventually it's going to reach the right people. You just have to believe and trust in that higher love, that higher power that's flowing through this. But Cindi, thank you again. Viewers, make sure you check out grantmeahigherlove.com. On a personal level, I've been read by Cindi, and she is amazing. She's brilliant. She's empowering, and as you see, right now, she tells it like it is. There's in the best way, but she'll tell you exactly not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. And that's how we make real change. But she is someone who has lived many different lifetimes in one, and I'm sure you could find something from Cindi, whatever your walk of life is. So, Cindi, you're welcome back at any time when you want to come in.
I
My
would love to.
Taurus sister, born 2 days apart, and my Long Island neighbor. Thank you for coming on and being your genuine, authentic, brilliant self.
And thank you for having me, and enjoy your day. And this was great. I just so enjoyed this. It was great fun.
Thank you. Thank you for all that you do.
Wow, that was a wonderful interview with Cindi Sansone-Braff. I loved her insight, her dynamicism, and her eclectic background from theater work to mediumship to intuitive work. And she's a wonderful coach as well, and just will get you to a higher love. So I highly recommend checking Cindy's work out as well as all of her books and upcoming events that she does have. So thank you for tuning into my interview with Cindi Sansone-Braff. We look forward to seeing you next week. We have a wonderful lineup of guests as I do each and every week. Thank you for tuning in and climbing the ladder. Let's ascend together. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you.